December 5th, 2017. This is a regular meeting. I want to thank you all. I'm sorry that I missed last week. I want to make a notation that this meeting is hereby being video recorded by the Whitman Hanson Cable Access Channel. We are required by open meeting law to state that, so keep on me, folks, if I don't say that. I know Kenny will. Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for their well wishes. I apologize for missing last week. My son came home for Thanksgiving and brought home more than his dirty laundry. So, from our family, thank you all. Why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, another fun and fantastic meeting. Well done, Kenny and group by last week.
Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely. Why don't we move directly to public announcements? The Hanson Community Christmas is accepting donations of gift and monetary donations. A giving tree is located at the Library Senior Center. Residents can take an ornament which lists a gift item, purchase the item, and deliver the unwrapped gift to the Library Senior Center along with the ornament. Monetary donations are always accepted at the Hanson Community Christmas P.O. Box 163, Hanson, Mass. 02341. For more information, please email www.hansоncommunitychristmas@gmail.com or call Jenna Gomes at 781-718-0891. I do want to take a minute just to let everyone know, too, if they get a chance, swing by inside the town hall. I think the folks here did a fantastic job decorating it. Kudos to them. It really feels like a great place to work in. I really liked what they did.
Some amazing creativity.
Yeah, some really nice things. So stop on in and say hi. The Veterans Agent's Office will be closed from December 1st through December 11th. Please plan your business accordingly. Tom McCarthy, Whitman Abington Veterans Agent, will be available for emergencies. The Town Clerk's Office will be closed on Friday, December 8th. Please plan your business accordingly. Tax possession auction will take place on Friday, December 8th in the Selectmen's Meeting Room. Registration begins at 9:30 a.m. The auction will be conducted by Strategic Auction Alliance of Braintree, Mass. For information on the 6 parcels, please call 877-426-8175 or go to their website, www.strategicauctionalliance.com. The annual tree lighting will take place on Saturday, December 9th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Santa will be on hand to visit with the lighting of the tree. Local restaurants will be offering samples of their fare. Fireworks display will cap off the evening. The George and Mary Mullen families, I'm sorry, Laura, did you want to know?
I did. And along those lines, I just want to mention that our firefighters who have been instrumental in putting together the annual tree lighting and the holiday festival have also got the Breakfast with Santa event that's going on that same day, so leading up to the holiday festival. And there are slots at 7, 8:30, and 10 o'clock. You can find information out on Facebook and also on their website, which I believe is Hanson Firefighters, and I think it's .com, right? Okay, yeah.
That's terrific, thank you. The George and Mary Mullen family's 62nd annual Red Acres Christmas Sing will take place on Saturday, December 17th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Sunday.
I'm sorry, Sunday, I apologize. Sunday, December 17th, thank you, Mary, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at Red Acres Farm at 517 West Washington Street. There will be a Kretsch scene, is that how you pronounce that? Okay, well, I was really worried about that
Major
one.
scene.
Yeah, and bonfire, marshmallow toasting, Christmas caroling, and lots of fun and Christmas cheer. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: 200th Anniversary, Agricultural, Capital Improvement, Capital Preservation Commission, Disabilities, Elder Affairs, Energy, Finance, Memorial Day, Patriot Observance, and Nathaniel Thomas Mill Committees. Applications for appointment and info on the committee is available on the town website at www.hanson-ma.gov. And upcoming meetings, We have the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee,
That's Saturday, the 9th,
Saturday,
at 1
December 9th.
o'clock. It's another walkthrough for the selectmen are invited if they'd like to come. And depending on the weather,
Weather? Sure,
whether
weather
or
permitting.
not it'll be or not.
Okay. That's a good thing it isn't now. Listen to that wind.
I know.
Okay, so Phil, will you be there doing with that walk too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, Phil will be
Both of
there.
us?
It's a posted committee meeting, so we hope all our members will be there, and any guests, such as yourself.
There'll be two of us there anyway.
That's terrific. Last time I went there, we had a great time. I learned a lot of things from you. Thanks. Historical meeting will be held Wednesday, December 13th at 6 PM. The school committee will be holding their meeting Wednesday, December 13th, 7 PM at the high school library. The CPC will be holding their meeting also Wednesday, December 13th at 7 PM. And then there's a selectmen's meeting Tuesday, December 19th at 7 PM. And that will be the last selectmen's meeting before the end of this year, right? There we go. And that concludes our public announcements and upcoming meetings. Does anybody have anything else to add? Correct? No? Okay. We'll move directly to new business. The first item on our agenda is the discussion regarding the regional dispatch. Mike, did you want to bring us into this? Did you want me just to state what my opinion is on it?
I'm sorry, Mike, me, or Mike?
Yes, Mike, first, and then Mike next.
I think we're at the point right now where the board needs to have a discussion in regards to whether it wishes to send a letter of attestation to Duxbury, the regional dispatch center in Duxbury, which would be at this point, would contain no obligation on the part of the town of Hanson to take a look at whether or not it makes sense financially, logistically, so on and so forth, both with the town of Duxbury, and I believe there's also a review on the state level by whatever agency overlooks this to see whether it makes sense to go forward. So I think the board, again, needs to make a decision as to whether or not it wants to take that initial step, and pursuant to the wishes of the board, we will take care of that.
Thank you, Mike.
So, Jim, I think it might be helpful, although we've all in various capacities read up on this, et cetera, I just think maybe for the purposes of people who may have nothing better to do tonight and are watching us, or people at some point in the future who might want to know about this, to queue up what it is that we're looking at, and what this letter means, and, and what has been done thus far to get us to this point.
Okay. And I agree. So basically, what we're talking about is regionalizing or joining with Duxbury's regionalization of other towns as well for their 911, would you call it 911 emergency? I'd say the dispatch.
Central
Is that correct?
dispatch.
Central dispatch. I think myself, Laura, at one meeting, and then Kenny maybe on a separate meeting, we attended a meeting with Captain Bob Reardon from that department, and also so I think there were a couple of other members, I forget their name, forgive me, but they gave us a tour of the area and of the center, the call center that they had, and it was really quite impressive. We are looking at this from a perspective in terms of the maybe communication improvements within the town on emergency calls. We're looking at it from a perspective of all different angles. And of course, cost is included, but also what we're more importantly looking at it too, I think, what from my perspective is the human factor. I do have, I do have that sense that we have to be responsible for what we do for the people that we employ in our town as well. So what we're being asked to do tonight is to decide as a group, as a board, is to talk about the pros and maybe the pros and cons. One of the items that we had asked from Chief Mix was to give us a list of the pros and cons, and by the way, Chief Mix, you did an excellent job on this. This was exactly what I was looking for.
And Chief Thompson.
Fire Chief Thompson as well on his correspondence regarding the pros and cons of the regional dispatch. So I would like to read some of the pros and cons, if that's possible, and I'll go through them quickly, but, and we'll see what it is, and maybe we'll just open it up for further discussion. But the first one I'd like to read is from the fire chief, Jerry Thompson. Dispatchers, this is a pro, these are the pros. And the pros are dispatchers focus solely on dispatching with supervisor on duty at all times, which provides a more efficient product. And I believe there's actually 3 dispatchers at this time, as opposed to 1. This efficient product provides simultaneous EMD dispatch of resources uninterrupted, which reduces the time from call to dispatch, drastically improving police officer and firefighter safety. Adequate staffing readily available for significant events. Increased networking with mutual aid towns. Continuous training with a quality assessment, quality improvement program to identify additional training needs as well as address accountability. All agencies are equal partners in the dispatch process. Equipment and upgrades at no cost to the town. Possible cost savings, which include salaries and benefits. Less responsibility regarding negotiating contracts and administrating discipline. Ability to receive cellular and 911 calls directly. Currently, our cellular 911 calls get routed to state police and then forwarded to us, which takes additional time. Several software features become available to the town at no cost, and then there's also a decrease in liability. And the cons were 2, not physically in our town, and the status of dispatchers' future employment. And that is from the fire chief's perspective. And Mike gave us a several-page document with an explanation of his points. But Mike, to be brief, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to read just the pros and cons. Chief Mix indicated that the pros were updated technology, radios, phone, and computers, potential reduced personal cuts, salary and benefits, potential higher grant funds, potential faster response times, more personnel on duty, greater coverage, reduced license fees for software. And the cons were technology, or lack of redundancy, loss of connectivity. Dark station, which means that the police station could be unmanned, which would reduce coverage during was it like midnight to 8 a.m., something to that effect, Mike? I think that's approximate. But that's what it means. Loss of local control, future unknown costs and fees, future loss of grants, local knowledge loss, institutional knowledge loss as well. The different streets, the different access to the streets, that type of thing. Potential decrease in response times, officers being taken off the street. So those were the pros and cons of both our fire chief and police chief. I should read to you another item from Captain Bob Reardon, which was from the Regional Old Colony Communications Center. He says, I'm not aware you had for info since we last spoke, but here are some bullets he wanted to talk about. State 911 got $48 million in requests for regionalization, but only had $12 million to award. He didn't go into the details why, but he made sure that that was a bullet to know. The ROCCC got to the highest award in the state at just under $1.7 million. Mike, ROCCC, what is this?
Regional All Colony Communication Center.
That's it, okay. Yeah, it's right there in the subject line, sorry, I didn't put that together. Okay, we are in the process of hiring a director. We are currently adding 6th and 7th dispatch console. We are starting the process of bringing Rochester into our dispatch center and hope to have them in by the spring. We are preparing to hire additional staff, including an additional supervisor for the addition of Rochester. And he obviously asks if we need anything else to please let him know. I will say that when we went there, I was impressed with their hospitality and their setup and system. It was quite a thing to see. So I would open the floor to any comments or questions from anybody on this table regarding this. And again, we're here today to talk about it's a letter of attestation for partnering with the other municipalities involved in this
Excuse me.
regional
Thank you.
Old Colony Command Center.
But again, the letter is non-binding, it's just to get the state to tell us whether they're okay, and the regional folks, whether they'd be okay tentatively if we decided to enter into this agreement. It doesn't bind us
Excuse me.
to actually do this.
That's correct. This is just for information.
Yeah.
This is just for information. This is, as you stated, Mike, this is not a commitment to the service in any way, shape, or form. It's basically a letter of request to ask them for information so that we can come to the decision afterwards as to whether we want to join or not. You know, and maybe weigh our own pros and cons in addition to what we know of these guys, you know? Donnie?
No, I'll just ask Jerry and Mike, the dispatchers that are now working in the center down there, they'll be going down and working in the central location, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. No, I'm just wondering if you're gonna have dispatchers from Hanson working in the main dispatch area. Somebody that knows the town of Hanson.
That was one of the questions we asked, and we were told that people would be given an opportunity if they wanted to. I don't know, Mike, if you wanna.
Yeah, they have a process for hiring people, so there's no guarantees. They actually have a very rigorous process, and I think they do a good job of hiring people. There's no guarantees that any of our personnel would be taken on by them. Historically, in other towns, they have, but they haven't necessarily taken everybody.
They have to go through some sort of formal test, Mike, is that right? Of some kind?
There's a formal test and then an interview, if I'm not mistaken, correct, Jerry?
Yeah, there's some scenarios.
Yeah.
No, because currently now, the dispatchers that are up there, they know the town of Hanson, they know the roads. And I was just curious whether or not there'd be somebody in there that knows the town of Hanson, like the dispatchers that work there now know the town. That's all.
So
You know, that's one of the things I was concerned with.
I think that, and then the potential dark station, having an unmanned station, makes me anxious. And I know that you've done the numbers and, you know, that it's not that often, but it's one of those things that it may not be often, but if you need it, you need it. And you know, if you're one of those statistics that might be the, whatever, the 12% or what, you know, that's coming after hours. That said, I know there are things that other towns have done where they've had a person man that, even though they've gone to regional, you know, they've got the remote ability where you can let people in remotely from the regional. I know there are some options, but I would say, Dawn, what you've just said, and then the manning of the, that's what gives me, you know, anxiety. I also have to say, call me jaded, but I think we've already gone down the regional road with the school district, and we've seen that the state doesn't always live up to what they initially commit when you regionalize. This isn't to say that I don't think that we need to explore this, but these are just, I think, pitfalls for the unwary, things we need to kind of take a look at once we get the information back and all. But you know, I know the state really is pushing for people to regionalize, so they're trying to make this as appealing as possible, and they're throwing dollars into it now, but you know, you change the administration or you get a different flow or a different priority, and we may not be seeing that money coming the way that it is now. And it's something to keep in mind, because we have been burned with that with the school district.
That's right. We've learned our lesson on
Yeah.
those funds from the school district and how they're in need all the time.
Yep.
Every year.
Yep.
Donnie, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna ask them, you're still gonna maintain people like at the fire station and the police station, so that somebody knocks on the door, they can get help there, right?
Currently, we don't want to call, second call, our station's empty, so nothing would change for us. The biggest impact is at the police station, but again, that all needs to be investigated. This step is just to see if we want to even get additional information.
No, because I know Mike said that you have a lot of people stop at the station to walk in, and if you don't have anybody there, that's what I was concerned with, because sometimes somebody needs something emergency, quick, and if there's nobody at the station that they can stop to, that might be a big thing, you know, in the long run.
So what would it mean, Mike, from a police station perspective? Nobody, it would be unmanned, right, for a certain point in time, or no?
Well, no, that's an option to go dark.
Right.
In my mind, I would fight you tooth and nail on that, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that's an option for Hanson. It's an option for some towns.
Right.
Example, Plimpton. Plimpton hasn't had an open station and a dispatcher in 20-some-odd years.
Right.
Right? But their call volume, their size is completely different than ours. I was actually shocked by the numbers when I started doing the count, how many people, I didn't think it was that high, how many people walked in. It was 290 people a month.
At the police station,
Yeah, which
that's a lot of people.
it is, and some of the stuff's routine that we could handle in other ways,
Yes.
but a lot of it isn't. And you know, I try to look at some things as a customer service point of view. If the citizens come in and they need a service from us, we need to provide that, and I don't like the idea of picking up a phone or talking to a screen to talk to somebody 10 miles away. But that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean if we go regional that we necessarily have to go dark, okay? For example,
I wouldn't want to see it go down.
no, and I don't think anybody would, but that's a factor in it, because you still have personnel costs, and it costs money to go there too. Norwell did not go dark. They don't dispatch anymore, they have a central dispatch, that's called the Shrek up in Hingham,
With Hingham, yeah.
but they didn't go dark. Whitman's dispatched out of the Holbrook Center, but they kept police on the desk.
What did you call them? Are they civilian clerks, Mike?
Civilian clerks is what Norwell did.
Okay,
So they have a civilian clerk there, 24/7.
right.
One of the things people don't realize is with our dispatches, they do a lot more than answer phones and press the button to talk on a radio. And most of it is on the police side, between running paperwork, running things for the officers, which to some extent that can be done regionally too, I understand that. But I have a prisoner in there, I have another body in there that can watch. If I get a real problem, I can send an officer out on the road. If I don't have somebody at that station, no one can ever leave that station with a prisoner there.
Right.
So they help with prisoner watch. They help with the customer service issues, people walking in, there's a real human being to answer your question. And just to go back 1 second on your question, Mr. Howard, earlier about, you know, are they from Hanson? It's a factor, but it's not a huge factor. And when I listed my pros and cons, I put in there institutional knowledge. One of the things that a good dispatcher is worth their weight in gold to a cop is, when I say the institutional knowledge, is they remember the family that came in with whatever their problem was 3 days ago, and they're back again. And they know that family, and they know the type of issue. The cops' schedules rotate. They might not see this family, and they might be dealing with another cop to go through the whole story again. And it's just helpful that when an officer goes to deal with somebody, they know that this lady's been in 3 times with a child custody issue already, and where it's been, and to direct them. That's part of that institutional knowledge, or that history, the family history and stuff, that I don't want to lose going regional. Can we keep it with civilian clerks? Maybe, I don't know. But I just wanted to touch on that, so with technology right now, the 99.9% of the time, we're gonna know where somebody is.
Yeah.
I can tell you we had a failure a couple of weeks ago. The GPS wasn't picking up, and we were having a real hard time finding somebody. But that's pretty rare, to be honest with you. One other thing, just in a couple of the dispatches I hear tonight, I wanna make sure everybody understands, this is no reflection that there's poor service, that there's a problem. There's no problems. They do a great job. I think they're all worth their weight in gold, and they do fine with us. It's a business decision the town has to look at. It's just the way I have to look at it. But
So in other words, the main call would go into another location,
yep.
and they would press a button and send it either to the police or fire.
No, that's not how they work in Duxbury.
Okay.
They would directly radio dispatch, or do a ring down line if we can figure out how to do that again. They would direct dispatch the officers or fire, which is currently what our dispatchers do now from Hanson. It's not just answer 911, and you can actually set up that system, not with both entities. Right now, I believe Whitman's working on the 911's answered in Holbrook, calls drop down to the officer on the desk, who then acts as a dispatcher locally, which would probably be an option that we could deal with too, but that would be something we'd have to bring up in the study.
Yeah, but while I was working with Landers, I worked in Rockland for almost 7 years, digging out the water reservoir up there. And there was a big problem of kids, not from Rockland, but from Weymouth and everybody else around, coming in and diving in the reservoir during working hours, and it was dangerous. And every time I called the police on the cell phone, it went through the state police. Well, I finally got smart, and I knew the number for Hanover, and I went to Rockland, and I got the number behind the desk in Rockland. So that by calling Hanover and Rockland on the phones that nobody knew about, they were able to converge and meet together, and they caught a lot of people doing it that way. That, that's what I was concerned about, how it was the communication was gonna go between it.
So just to clarify, I didn't know you were specifically talking about like the cell phone. So cell phone 911s do, for us, go to the state, then come to us. They get stepped down to the Hanson dispatcher. I sent a letter to state 911 a while ago asking them to review it. What they would do is they would review the call volume geographically in the area, determine whether you can handle it or not, and then go forward whether we can be a sender that could receive those calls directly. There's a holdup, I've been told, and it's not just with us, it's apparently with everybody who's done that same letter, because we have an enhanced 911 system through Raytheon, and apparently the state and the vendor aren't seeing eye to eye on how much it actually costs to do that switchover. I was told there was one entity was given a $100,000 cost tag to do that, and state 911 obviously doesn't want to pay that. So that's being worked on the state level. So I've started to try and look at what it is that we can do that to get them directly, but I have no idea when the 911 is going to get back to us on it, because there's definitely an issue and it's way above us.
Jerry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that Chief Mix has said. We were approached by the regional dispatch. You guys were sent a letter. We went down, we looked at it. We can talk about this all night long.
I know.
At the end of the day, we have to make a decision, well, you have to make a decision. We have a bunch of information that when we're looking to get information from the 911 to see if they'd even allow it.
Right.
Once that happens, we have to sit down collectively, everybody, and make an informed decision. So we can't even get to these discussions because it might come back and not even be feasible, so.
Yep.
So that's what this purpose of this discussion is in this letter, so.
Just wanted to have it.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question for Mike. And right now, it is just about the letter of intent to possibly pursue this. But, Mike, besides being the dock station, the one thing that bothered me was the reduced coverage on the street.
Okay, that, without this letter and the study being done, I don't know.
Okay.
It's a possibility, I know.
Look, I've talked to the town, I've talked to every town that's over there. I've talked to their chiefs, and everybody's gone for their own reasons. I've talked to some places who have said they're not going. One that did the letter, and I don't know whether they're gonna go or not. They became a price increase that they didn't expect, and they were looking to go to save money. Whether that town will ever go, I don't know. That's something else that they're working with, trying to create this regional dispatch into an authority. Into an authority. So looking at us, when I say reduced coverage, some towns, so Plimpton being one, is doing better. It looks like Rochester will probably do better. Halifax is having some growing pains from what I've seen and been told because of being called back to the station. So, but they're a dark station. So we're not gonna know until we do the letter to answer your question. You asked for the pros and cons, everything I put on there, I think I said potential.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, so Mike just touched on this, and I think Don did too. Another thing that does bother me is right now, if we've got an issue, any of us have got an issue, we can go to Chief Mix and say, we don't, and if that hasn't been the case, and I absolutely want to make it clear and reiterate what Chief Mix said, which is, this is not a reflection of anybody's performance at all. We haven't heard anything negative at all. But if we were, we know we've got that direct line. As it is right now with the Duxbury situation, I know that they've said that there's an infrastructure in place where, we could go to them, we could tell them that we were having issues, that we didn't think that dispatch was doing the right thing or whatever. And I know that it's their intention at some point in the future to become an authority, to become, like we've got the regional school district to become, so that we each have an equal voice at the table. But that is not the case right now. And that would definitely be a deal killer for me. That if that were not achieved before we were going to even look at this, that I would have an issue with it. That said, back to what Jerry kind of alluded to is, I think we've got a fiduciary duty here to kick the tires, get the information, lay it on the table, and have the conversation. I can't, in my mind, justify not moving forward with just getting the letter and getting that ball rolling.
Right, I'll motion it.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Johnny, let me read the letter to the people, because it's
Okay.
not that much. So, it says, "Dear Executive Director Pozniak, I am the municipal," and I suppose what we're going to do is make a motion for Mike to
Yes.
approve and sign. I am the municipal manager for the city or town of Hanson. I'm sending you this request to my official capacity, and in such capacity, I attest to the fact that Hanson has agreed to participate with it would be the Duxbury Town Department as a partner in studying the planning for forming a regional PSAP or regional secondary PSAP or regional emergency communication center as set forth in the application for state 911 department development grant funding submitted by the town of Hanson. I further attest to the fact that I have full authority to commit the participation of my town in this regional project, and that I have communicated to the police chief or fire chief for Hanson that I am sending this letter attesting that Hanson is participating in this regional project. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me at a phone number. So again, this is just asking for information on this matter, but I will tell you, and before we make the motion and go to vote, I know we've got some employees here. Is that right, Permit? I'll tell you something. I'm 55 years old from my own personal perspective, okay? And I've come a long way. I think I have, honestly. And it's going to be a really hard sell because I'm interested in the human factor as well, which is yourselves. And I think these guys are here too. I know they are, okay? So we don't take it lightly. Honestly, we don't. We're not saying that anybody's doing a poor job or anything's broken. And my grandfather always said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But we would be doing a disservice to the town if we didn't ask for more information before we made the decision. So I hope that's what you understand where we're coming from, and that's the angle, okay? But frankly, between you and I gotta say this is gonna be a really hard sell, because I'm 55, and I know what it's like when my job is on the line, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. So with that, I would entertain a motion to allow Mike to send this letter of attestation for partnering municipalities, as I read previously.
We have a motion by Dawn.
Oh, it's been motioned.
Second.
Second by Donnie, second by Kenny Mitchell. Further discussion, any comments? Move on to the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0 on requesting additional information. Thank you. Next, we have on our agenda is the forestry management plan. And I believe, is that going to be, Mike, are you speaking to that, or we have Dave? David, are you speaking to this, or
We
no?
have Phil.
It's actually a
Oh, Phil and
combination, and I think, actually, we were gonna take Dave first, I believe.
Dave Hanlon, please. Thank you, Dave, for coming today.
Right. I'm going to start out with the tree wardens report to the board. Just for a little background, I was appointed tree warden in December 2015, elected in May of 2016. Prior to that, working with Bob Brown and Dick Harris before him. One of the things that we've changed is the budget for the tree department has been $2,000 for quite a long time. We've gone in the past to town meeting and supplemented that budget with additional money. Excuse me. This past May at town meeting, we were able to, there was enough money in the budget to raise the amount, the budgeted amount to $25,000 a year. And that's really not a lot of money. The majority of the work that is done by a private contractor. We have to hire the contractor, police details and whatnot. Anything other than that is done by the highway department, because there is, the only personnel in the tree department is me. So the highway department is the labor. The men from the highway department will take down trees that they have to. But the biggest, for years, our tree removal program was basically when it fell down, we picked it up.
That's it.
And now, the last couple of years, we've been very aggressive in trying to take down dangerous and diseased trees before they fall. With what happened a couple of years ago in Rockland, New Hampshire, Vermont, trees falling on cars, people being killed, Halifax, a few years ago, a business owner here in town was killed when a tree fell in front of him when he was on his motorcycle. We've got more aggressive in trying to take care of the problem before it becomes a problem. And it's a constant shuffle of prioritizing. We get calls from citizens all the time about this tree here and that tree, and you look at them and say, yeah, it probably has to come down, and then you get another call and say, oh, well, that one's got to come before the person who called 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago, or but the majority of what we do is, take the trees down before they fall on the road. If they do fall on the road, we clear them. These past 2 storms that we had, it really wiped out the overtime line for the highway department, because the men of the highway department were picking up trees. That being said, if it wasn't for the cooperation that we have with National Grid, we'd be in a lot worse shape. National Grid, under the direction of the Department of Public Utilities, has invested a lot of money in removing trees that are a hazard not only to the public but to the power lines. We did have some power issues these last 2 big windstorms that we had, but they were very small compared to what we went through 5 years ago, where half the town was out power for 5 or 6 days. So, and the other thing with National Grid too, is in talking to them, they have a vegetation management plan that they present every year. I go over it with them. We'll go around and look at certain sections. And they're very good that if they're working in an area and they want to take these 3 trees on the right-hand side of the road, and there's one on the left-hand side of the road that's really not going to endanger their lines, but it needs to come down, we can work with them and they can take it down. And the work National Grid does is at no cost to the town. So the priorities are always changing, but with National Grid working with us, it's really alleviated a lot of the situations that we've had in the past. Another thing that I've started doing is, we have a lot of car accidents in town where a vehicle will strike a tree and it damages a tree. Now in the past it was always, okay, well, pick up all the car parts, the tree's still standing, it's good. But 5 to 6 years later, that tree is dead and it's a hazard. So what we've started doing is, through the company that we employ for accident recovery, if they hit street signs or light poles or stuff like that, damage town property, including town trees, they will come in through the vehicle operator's insurance. They will remove the tree and replant another tree. That's something that, now that the budget is up a little higher, that we've started to do. There was a tree in front of the Indian Head School that was hit. We had it removed, a new tree was planted, a couple at the intersection of Whitman and East Washington Street on that corner, and various trees around town. We've also, let me see here. So we're trying to get back into planting more, and Mr. Clemens and I have had discussion, as well as with Mr. McHugh. There's a Tree City USA program. It's a program to plant more trees, and not necessarily on the side of the road where they can get hit again, but in places where you need them. Conservation areas, the town forest, the town hall green. And through that, where Mike and I have been working on applying for this. Now, there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. There's only 88 in the state that are considered tree cities. And hopefully, we've started the process, and Mr. McHugh can answer more to that because he's been involved in that before. Another thing too, Camp Kawani, we removed approximately 10 trees around the main lodge building. Those trees were dangerous and they were hazardous to the building and the general public. So those trees were removed. For the septic system that's going in up there, there were an additional 46 trees that were removed from the camp. And that seems like a lot, and when you look, there's some big open areas there. The tough part's going to be coming up that there's approximately 60 trees, on the entrance road into Camp Kawani that are all old maple trees. And they're real nice, and they were planted way back when Mr. Burridge planted them all down Camp Kawani and down Pleasant Street. I think there's 5 of them left on Pleasant Street. There's 55 of them, 60 of them along the road to Camp Kawani that need to come down. That's a huge expense. And even with a budget of $25,000, that's not enough money for the tree department, tree expense to cover that. But for liability reasons, it's something that should be looked at. And when those trees come down, that gives us an option to possibly widen the road, better access, as well as we can plant other trees. We don't have to plant them along the road. The Camp Kawani piece of property is huge. The Smitty's Bog property off of Indian Head Street, the Nowazowski property. There's all the different conservation areas in town, the town forest. You know, we can, through the Mass Tree Wardens Association and the Arbor Day Foundation, we have the option to buy seedlings for, it's like $150 for 100 seedlings. And with the cooperation of the Boy Scouts or the Kiwanis or the Lions Club or any other civic organization that wants to get together, with the cooperation of the Conservation Commission, we can, start replanting some of the trees that have come down. Because we haven't had, other than, we did last Arbor Day, we planted a tree at the Library Senior Center. We have planted some trees around. Some of the trees on the far side of the Town Hall Green had to be removed because they were hazardous. Somebody was going to get hurt. So we can plant more trees. And that's something that we're trying to do. Before it was always, like I said, when the tree fell down, we picked it up and that was it. Now we're aggressively trying to take down the dangerous trees and at the same time replant more trees and try to bring some of it back.
Dave, were you part of the tree removal from the fire station to the town hall?
Yes. Right.
Too?
That was done. That was, National Grid was involved with that. They helped us out with that. The National Grid arborists are incredible people to work with. They're really good. National Grid is a very community-oriented company. We depend on them for electricity, but they depend on us for a lot of other things. And we have a very good working relationship with the arborists. Mr. McHugh does with the regional vice president, I believe his title is, or operations manager, or
Brockton,
as well as the 2 chiefs. So they were involved in that.
Excellent. What about, can I ask you, so like, who decides if a tree is on somebody's property line or not? Do you do, how do you do?
If the
how do you
tree,
figure that
if
out?
the tree is on private property,
Yeah,
the only thing that I can do is suggest to the person to take the tree down. I can't go to your house and say, hey, that tree in your backyard's kind of dangerous and it's gonna fall in your neighbor's shed, you should take it down. Because you're gonna tell me that, well, no. So, trees within the layout of the road,
That's
we-
the only place you can go.
right, we can do that on any town property.
That was the same in Hanover.
Right, you know, and the general law covering shade trees is it's actually pretty big. But the majority, the one thing that overrules everything with public shade trees is public safety.
right. What
So-
happens if you've got the base of the tree on the private property, but the majority of it is hanging over onto the street? Something like that. How do you deal with something?
We can, we have that come up, and typically through talking with the homeowner, and National Grid does the same thing.
It's in the wires, yeah.
Yeah, if it's in the wires, but even if it's impinging on the road, you know, we can talk to the residents, and most of the residents are very good about it. We had that situation on Whitman Street at the beginning of the school year. Within, by the second day of school, we got 4 calls from 4 different bus drivers that have to come out of Holly Ridge. And there was a tree, it's on private property,
It's hanging.
but it's hanging out into the layout of the road. And talking with the residents, they had no problem. We went in, we trimmed that tree back, so for line of sight, you know, the tree didn't have to come down.
Right.
And that's some of the stuff that the men from the highway department can take care of. There are other times when the tree's big enough that we have to call the contractor in with a bucket truck to take it down. You know, and it's one thing that, I'm not here asking for more money, but
But while I'm on the topic,
since we're there, one thing that we're looking into, years ago, the town had the opportunity to pick up a wood chipper through Army military surplus. It was actually, the police department got the wood chipper for drug eradication, so they could shred marijuana plants. We were looking for other stuff, but they managed to get it for that. So we had that chipper. That was old. The Camp Kawani went out and purchased a brand-new secondhand used chipper that lasted for quite a few years, and we recently auctioned that off because it was unsafe. That's something that in the future, if the town could purchase its own chipper, then instead of having to hire a tree crew to come in with a bucket truck and a chipper and ground labor, we could hire the bucket truck with one man to trim the trees, and then our staff can chip them and dispose of the
what's the
chips.
approximate cost of that?
Yeah.
Of a chipper?
Yeah, commercial grade, I'm sure. right?
Approximately $60,000, $70,000.
What would be the payoff, like 2 years, 3 years on that, or?
Well, at $25,000 a year to spend, minus police details, probably 4 years it would pay off, and a life expectancy for the amount of work that we'd have,
Right.
probably 20 years. Whereas,
So it's a no-brainer.
Mr. Mitchell could answer better, a commercial tree company, chipper would last you,
Yeah, probably 8 years.
8 years.
7 years.
But
so we
I'm
could,
way off. I thought it was only gonna be about maybe 15, 20,000. Holy mackerel.
no, it's expensive, but.
They used to be.
But we're not talking the little DR wood chipper that
Yeah, I know.
you cut your grass
Yeah,
and
how
shred
big
your
are the-
weeds and vacuum the
You need,
yard
you need an 18-inch chipper.
with. Like
Okay.
an 18-inch chipper.
I think that's the best one, Kenny, or would
What's
a
that?
20, would a 20 be better?
20 would be better, but it'd be more money.
Oh, all right.
And at 20 inches, we're not gonna pick it up and put it in, so.
We'll put it in for the town meeting next.
Right.
time.
And something else that I want to address while I'm here, because the questions come up. When we take down trees that are on town property within the layout of the road, when we take down the tree, we have residents ask, oh, you know, can I have the wood? Same thing when the trees were coming down at Camp Kawani, you know, what are you gonna do with the firewood? Well, one of the things that we've done is to negotiate the best price from the tree company is to allow them to take the wood. So they process it, whether it's log length wood that they're gonna mill, or they're gonna chip and sell the chips to a paper company or something like that.
I was just gonna ask you, what do you do with the? do you chop-
They take
You
it,
take it,
and
let them-
and it actually works out well for us, the town, because we don't have to store wood, we don't have to, we're not cutting firewood, we're not allowing people to come onto town property using a chainsaw, cutting up logs,
Yep.
firewood, the whole liability issue.
Right.
And the wood is, it's more valuable, it's more cost effective for us to allow the tree company to take the wood than for us to have to deal with it afterwards. And since they're able to take the wood, they give us a better price than if they would just cut it down and leave it for us.
Understand.
Dave, I only have one question. You said with the trees up at Camp Kawani, there was 10, and then there was 46.
Correct.
Have we, or has the highway department, or you as the tree warden, replanted any trees up there at all?
At this time, no, because the original 10 trees were taken from right around the lodge. We knew the septic system was coming, and it was going to be a very large system taking up a large area. One of the reasons why the count was so high, when you first looked at the map, it was easy to say, okay, well, that tree's in the way, and that tree, and that tree. But what you have to remember is the root structures of the trees. So if they went through digging a big hole right next to a 24-inch tree, that tree could stand there, and 3 years from now, we'd be cutting it down because the root structure would be compromised and the tree would die.
Okay.
So it seems like a lot of trees were taking out, and actually there were. And as I said, there's another, if you were to walk the Camp Kawani Road from Route 58 to the gatehouse, I believe it's 55 trees right there. Walk through the camp sometime and look at all the trees in there that need to come down. There's been zero maintenance. And that's nobody's fault. It's the nature of the beast and what the budget allows.
Some priorities, yeah.
And prioritizing. To me, a tree at Camp Kawani at the far south end of the camp
Understand.
is not a priority compared to a tree on the side of Winter Street
Right.
that has
Traffic.
traffic going by at 30,000 cars a day.
So how does somebody get a tree on the list? What do they do? Call
Call the Highway Department office,
Give them a response.
781-293-2822.
Yep.
Jameson Shave is there, he can take a message. All the calls we respond to the calls, we'll go and look at them. Sometimes people just call to point it out. And there are times when we'll get a call, whether it's from a motorist, a citizen, somebody walking their dog, the police department. I'll get a phone call at 5:30 at night. Hey, you have to come down and look at this tree. And you look, and there's the top of the tree snapped off and it's hanging over the road. That results in an emergency call to the tree company. They come out. They're very responsive.
Yeah.
They come out, take care of it. But we have to pay for it. It's not free. And I'm not looking to get, back in the 80s, there was, I believe it was 4 people on the tree department. They had a tree truck. They had all kinds of. We don't have that anymore. The highway department has 4 men on the road. The tree department used to be 4 people. So, and the highway department does all that work. And there's enough work. There's enough work within the highway department to increase the staffing. I'll throw that in while I'm here. And by the same token, that will also help with some of the tree work.
Right.
So.
How much are we spending annually? I know you had a budget of 25,000, but listening to what you're saying, I can't imagine that we're only spending 25,000.
That's it, we're not overspending.
You're not spending any more than that?
Nope.
Okay.
The way Dick Harris worked it, and Bob Brown worked it, and I learned from them, and it's a smart thing to do, that every year, come June, we're saving money, like $1,000, just for that emergency call, or those 2 emergency calls. I will not spend every penny in the budget by June 1st, because then if something happens, where's the money gonna come from?
Right.
So we save money. This past year, we had $1,000, and actually, the way things worked out, they carried it over into into this year's budget, which worked out well.
Now, where are you gonna get the money for the Camp Kawani trees, which I agree does open up a whole window of opportunities for access there, which have plagued the camp for years, and I hate to see trees that old and beautiful and historical go, but if you're saying they're a safety issue, that's a different situation. I would, I guess you don't have that
Where
in
am
your...
I gonna get the money?
Well,
I think the question is, where are we gonna get the money?
are you coming to town meeting for that? Are you
That's something-
anticipating?
I was hoping to see you canning out in front of Shaw's.
That's,
boy.
that's actually something that Mr. McHugh and myself have talked about. It's something that we are gonna have to address.
Okay.
At this point, with a $200,000 plus septic system going in, the camp's a little shy on cash right now. You know, the Conservation Commission, they have some money that they can use, and it's not finger pointing as to, well, it's not my tree, it's your tree.
No, no.
They're all our trees, and we have to decide the best use for the money and where the money's gonna come from.
I don't think it should be coming from conservation. They've got a lot of other important things to spend that money on. I think, I'd like to see town meeting, I'd like to see us talk about that, Mike, but town meeting just coming up with the money if that's what needs to be done, you know?
And you know, a lot that can go along with that, and it doesn't all have to be done at once, but I'm sure all of us have attempted to enter or exit Camp Kawani at a time when there's a function going on. It's basically a one-lane road with little cutoffs. Well, those cutoffs are where trees have died and fallen, and gives you someplace to pull over.
You play chicken the whole way up.
Correct, and it is a 40-foot easement from Route 58 all the way into the camp.
Is that because the pullover areas where the ground has got compacted by the cars and impacted the root systems, or?
No, it's trees that have gone in the past.
Just gone,
There's
okay.
one section, as you enter the camp on the left-hand side, 10, 12 years ago when the water main was put in down there, the new water main, a lot of those trees had to come out.
Okay.
I think Mr. Clement and Don had-
Phil Clemens.
When Mr. Hamlin's done, I think we've made some pretty good segues here, but I have a few comments on other trees, and I think it would maybe complete the tree management picture for the
In
town,
the
but
forest.
I'm not rushing him to finish. This
Yep.
has been very useful.
No, I think it's been a great report. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Dave. This
Yeah,
is
thanks.
This is one of those things that few people may not really know of, or how to
Yeah,
get their name on the list.
and it's tough too, because, you know, people call and they have a tree and there's a dead limb, and it's in front of their house and it's within the road layout, and yeah, it's very important to them.
Yeah,
But the tree that's cracked and hanging over High Street, where there's a school bus stop, is more important.
right, I understand.
You know, and every time, I have a running list, and it's prioritized, and
Based on-
every time a call comes in, you just shuffle it up and reprioritize. And,
Sure.
you know, we have a very good relationship with the contractor that we have, but they're not available. I can't call today and say, hey, all right, I need a full crew here tomorrow. Doesn't work that way, it's all scheduled. Weather plays a huge factor. Now, they just issued a wind warning.
You can hear it.
Yeah.
40 to 50 mile an hour winds tonight.
Yeah,
So then that's gonna cause some problems for us, I'm sure,
right,
as well as for the tree companies.
sure.
So,
Well, thank you very much. for
Work
the
in
report.
progress.
It
Yeah, this was excellent.
It
Thanks,
was a
Dave.
great report.
Thanks, Dave.
And it's on us to make sure that we communicate that to people, how to contact you and get their.
right, you can call the highway department office. We're there Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. Somebody checks that building on weekends, checks for messages. Every Saturday, every Sunday, one of us is in there.
Great.
To check. And if it's an emergency, call the police department,
Sure.
the police station, the fire station, they'll call us. They'll
Okay.
get a hold of me. They always get a hold of me.
Thank you. And,
Not to belabor the point, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to point out that Dave, Phil, and I have been talking for quite some time about a lot of what was brought up here by the board in terms of repopulating the trees at the camp. Obviously, we're not doing that right now because the work is still in progress. But, and in terms of replacing the other trees that Dave has mentioned up and down the drive that leads to Camp Quaney, I want to say, and I think the board, through some of my comments in the past year and a half, know that this is actually a subject that's dear to me, and I've promoted this in other places that I've worked. And I'm very encouraged and, to use the word excited might be a little overkill, but I'm very, very happy with the direction that Phil, Dave, and I are going with in terms of trying to be proactive in terms of repopulating the trees here in the town of Hanson. So I appreciate all the efforts or the cooperation I get from both of these gentlemen and the people with whom they work.
Right, and one more thing with the Tree City USA program through the, the Arbor Day Foundation. Excuse me. There are 4 standards that have to be met, and one of the standards is that the town or city has to spend at least $2 per capita based on the last census. So the last census being just over 10,000 people, we need at least $20,000 in the budget. And this fiscal year is the first time that the budget has ever met that. And as long as we continue in this direction, it'll help us, because once we get this program going, and Mike can explain more of it, but there are grants out there for trees and plantings and things that we can do. And it's just, it is a very good program. And like Mike, I don't want to say I'm excited about it, but it is something that it's better than just cutting down all the trees.
Sure. That's what, it's one of the items that makes Hanson so attractive.
Yep.
Is our tree population, right? I know it sounds kind of corny, but it's the truth.
It is true.
Waterways.
And the trees along Camp Kawani Road, a lot of people, they are beautiful.
When you drive up, yeah.
But just because there's leaves on the tree doesn't mean that it's not dead.
Right.
Or dying or damaged. So in those trees, through talking with Phil, it's not a native species of tree.
That's a good segue, but when you're ready, I'll just add a
But-
few more.
so-
They were planted there.
Yeah.
Correct.
We'll,
I know, because they were a lot smaller when I swam there 70 years ago.
7 years ago?
70.
70.
It was a road?
And at this point, I'll defer to Mr. Clements.
Mr. Clements,
with
come
your
on
permission,
up.
sir.
Mr. Hanlon, thank you very
Did
much.
you take your
Dave,
horse
thank
up to
you.
go swimming, Don? Did you take your horse up to go swimming?
That's where I learned how to swim.
Yeah.
Don't listen to these hecklers.
Don't be wise.
Mr. Clements, thank you
Getting
today.
wise.
Well, it's always a good day when town officials show interest in trees.
Sure.
Which doesn't happen every day, but unless there's a crisis. But it's a good example for how everyone should think about them, and it's always good to know of any questions or problems that come up or that are anticipated. I think Mr. Hanlon's done a very good job of describing the stance that the town is taking now in terms of problems. And again, as Mr. McHugh said, Mr. Hanlon said, we've actually had a number of brief and also fairly lengthy conversations about how to manage trees. And there's a sense of, I think, healthy and sensible boundaries about whose tree is this. It was good along the side of the road. But we also have extensive conservation areas where there's like acres and acres that are not near anyone's house and so on. And so what has logically happened, and what I think we'll be very stringent with going ahead, is that some trees the responsibility of the tree department or a homeowner. Other trees, the responsibility of the Conservation Commission, care and custody of the Smith-Nowazelsky Conservation Area, for example, or the Poor Meadow Brook Conservation Area. What we found is that there are some places where interests overlap. For example, the frontage of the town forest, where you have Indian Head Street and a lot of power lines. I mean, going back a couple of years, we talked about National Grid wanted to come in, and conservation isn't going to stand in the way of public safety. But there are places where we also, conservation tries to bring to the table not just management or watching trees grow away from the street, but basically be kind of a scientific consultant. We've had a lot of our members, past and present, go to both academic and continuing education training on forestry. And this is always a topic at the annual Mass Conservation Commission meetings. And for example, we last September, Hanson hosted a region-wide forest stewardship conference right at the senior center. And the lead forestry expert from UMass Skyped into that conference, and we had people from Uxbridge and the Cape and everything. And we're trying to be a part of understanding how to manage forests. Most people don't live in forests anymore. They might think they do if they've got 10 trees in their backyard. But there's larger scale things, which conservation tries to stay on top of, and specific things, like Dave mentioned. Not all tree species are created equal. A tree that might have been popular 100 years ago as a shade tree, some of those things are illegal to sell in Massachusetts anymore in nurseries. Because it's from somewhere else, it doesn't participate in, the butterflies we love to see don't touch it, and it's just what they call exotic or invasive. And whenever there's a chance to improve the health of our forests in that sense, or to control things that are harmful, even though you might not think they're harmful, sometimes they are, we'll try not to miss those opportunities. For example, I think the Kewanee Road trees, I think a lot of those, not all of them, might be Norway maple. They call it Norway maple because they're not from here. But sugar maples or red maples, other things, there may be better choices, whether it's there or on the grounds of the camp itself.
Right.
And one other thing I will throw in, we do have forest stewardship plans for 3 of our largest properties. These have been put together by a professional forester on a consulting basis: Veterans Memorial Town Forest, Smith-Nowazelsky Conservation Area, and the Poor Meadow Brook Conservation Area. And under the terms of an article from a few town meetings ago, if there were management of the forest that took place and there was a harvest, a selected, carefully controlled, professionally managed harvest, and there was some net proceeds from that, conservation can take those proceeds up to $15,000 and retain it in a designated fund for managing the forest on an ongoing basis. So it isn't coming back to the voters and asking for more money. That's not something you do every day, and I think in this room a couple of years ago we discussed that it's not like you're digging gold, but every dollar counts, and to manage forest that way and the funds that way, we think makes a lot of sense.
So every tree that's taken out of there is being sold?
Well, let's be specific.
If it's part of your forestry management program and those 3 pieces of property are
On those rare events, which have been like 10 or 20 years apart, honestly, there's been a couple in the past before my watch, when trees would be removed under this plan, it would be done by a forester who competitively was hired to do the job, be supervised by the professional forester, and both those parties would be paid from the proceeds of the sale, whether it be for timber, firewood, biomass, chipping products. And let's say there was $10,000 worth of product removed from a forest. Maybe the contractor would get 6. Maybe the consultant would get 1, and that would leave, what, $3,000 for the town? That's hypothetical.
Okay, have there been any other occasions where trees would have been harvested that were not part of the stewardship program from any of those properties? In other words, if a tree naturally falls, or, I don't know, if you're clearing it, say, for the parking lot up at Poor Meadow Brook, those types of things.
What we did with a few of those specific cases, every case is specific. If a tree falls in the town forest and the limbs are laying on the ground and the Boy Scouts camp there, we say it's perfectly okay for them to pick up the limbs and use it for their firewood, for a campfire. On a more formal basis, we did some clearing, very modest amount of clearing at the Poor Meadow Brook Conservation Area, the frontage there, which we're trying to make it a little bit more park-like, a little bit more inviting. Some of those trees were invasive species. We're glad to see them go, but almost everything was chipped on site and hauled away, and the value of that stuff being removed actually reduced the cost of the contract to begin with.
Okay, but
So in other words, it was built into the project.
In no circumstance are we allowing private citizens to take wood off of town property?
Not on any formal basis. As Mr. Hanlon mentioned, if you have a piece of town property and someone decides to help themselves to firewood, one word for that might be theft.
Right.
And that happened. We lost, back in the early 1980s, when I was first on the Conservation Commission, someone helped themselves to about 400 trees down in the southern part of town. And
Town trees.
Town trees.
Yeah.
There was a 14-acre conservation area where someone just went and took them because they thought it would be fun. Not fun, but they wanted them, so they took them. I was not on the commission long enough to know how that turned out, but there was potentially a civil case involved. On a much smaller and more common type scale, if a town tree falls from the forest into someone's yard, well, if it falls in your yard and it's laying there, I think technically the
No,
law is
I'm
yours.
talking about people actively going to town-owned property and removing trees that they have not been, I understand that they're not supposed to be doing that, but I have had several citizens tell me that they have witnessed people doing this.
We
This is
wish
why I'm
that,
asking
we
this.
wish that to not happen.
Okay.
Because there's liability, and what if we have been marshaling, let's say, a particular grove of trees because it's valuable, maybe acorns, fruits for wildlife, and, shade, and, along the sides of trails, to have someone cut that tree down and take it is not a good thing. It would be frankly wrong, and we don't want those things to happen.
Okay, so if it's happening, it isn't with your knowledge?
Heavens, no.
Okay.
And I would probably recommend that they call the police or the authorities if they do
Well,
see something to that nature.
You know, I think we need to be like New York City in that we probably need signs. If you see something, say something. I don't know
Yeah.
why people don't call and
Yeah.
say stuff, but they feel hesitant to do that. I agree, Jim.
These signs that
Yeah.
you typically see at state or federal or local conservation areas are, please do not cut or remove any vegetation. And that includes everything from, you probably wouldn't pick the poison ivy, but certainly trees and whatnot. If someone, I can't speak to every single twig and branch, but as a principle, it's not something we condone. We wish it to not happen. And one thing we're working on is have more informative signage at the access points to all conservation properties, including that general statement.
What were the three properties again? Smith?
Smith-Nowazowski on Elm
Meadow
Street,
Brook, yeah.
Poor Meadow Brook on West Washington,
Town Forest.
and the Veterans Memorial Town Forest
Okay,
on Indian
yep.
Head Street. We've got plans, and just because we have a plan doesn't mean we're going to do it this winter, but we have created the option for doing it when time and other projects and priorities and the condition of the forest and the price of timber, when the stars line up, that's something we would do. But be assured, we'd have a lot of communication about that. We don't want to create concern in the minds of neighbors or citizens. We want people to know in the board, this board, to know what's going on well ahead of time.
Okay.
So we feel we are in a pretty good place as far as managing things. And one other thing is, what we're doing these days is, in the conservation arena, when we have a project that comes before us and it involves some sort of impact on forests, we like to see that impact mitigated, either put back the amount or maybe 50% more than that amount somewhere. One example of what we're doing is, in the Webster Billings Conservation Area, we're exploring for water. There's been a plan made with full cooperation between the Water Commissioners and the Conservation Commission to allow that exploration to go forward. But what we've done is we've measured the impacts that have happened from the exploratory equipment, and also trees on behalf of the contract have been measured and quantified what would need to be removed if they put in a road to drill a well. Those will all be compensated for. In fact, some trees will be avoided. The road's going to go around them.
Because of the size of the trees and the
Yes.
age? Yeah.
I will say this, there's a tree that the town owns. It's going to be a destination, but it's not one yet. The circumference of that tree, it's an oak tree, is 168 inches. It's probably one of the 3 or 4 biggest oak trees in the state that we know of. But it's not a destination yet, so don't go looking for it. There's no trail. But we feel that the mitigation from that, or much smaller projects, is an opportunity to have people perhaps even fund the restoration of trees around town as needed and on a carefully species by species selected basis. We don't want to be part of the problem, we want to be part of the environmental solution.
What about the, what's the fun fact, the oldest tree, was it one of the oldest trees in Hanson on King Street? Is that?
There is a tree on King Street, used to be 2, now there's 1. The common name is sycamore, a synonym is buttonwood.
That thing is huge.
It's very, very big, and a pretty dramatic local story, and there's no reason to doubt that it's true,
Bunker Hill.
is that as those trees, because there were 2, were being planted, the people were listening to the cannon fire for the Battle of Bunker Hill.
Bunker Hill, that's it, yeah.
Back then, it was a very quiet landscape and a lot fewer trees in between to rustle noise, so it's a believable story.
Sure.
But trees are part of our heritage, but no tree lives forever. So someday,
It will.
every tree is going to come down. You need to have a sort of a dynamic plan for keeping it going and improving whenever you have a chance.
The leaves are twice as big as my hand. you know.
Well, there's a lot of dramatic trees around here. It's not something you'd see on the news, but by golly, it's a quality of life thing.
Sure.
So
you,
appreciate
Phil.
your interest.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you for that.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so I think that will allow us to move to, for our new business, although we have on our agenda, vote and accept donations from Nathaniel Thomas Mill. I'm going to table that for next time. We've completed the forestry management plan and the tree warden report. Thank you both very much. And next, we're on to the Whitman Hanson Cable Access Contract for board's review and vote at the next meeting. So you should have gotten copies also, if I believe, in your email on the Whitman Hanson Community Access.
Item 2, Jim.
Yep. Is it on item 2? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is the agreement. So what we're asking this board to do is to read it thoroughly. We've got some new members since the last election. I know Laura and Jim may just read through it as best you can. We actually came up with a matrix of items that were going to be submitted to us, and I believe.
I don't think I put the matrix in that
Not into this?
particular.
We
Okay.
went over it recently, though.
We
wasn't
did.
it
We
like-
had
Thought we
yeah.
did
We did,
too, yeah.
but I forgot to put the matrix.
So if you need a copy of it, you can ask. But I think we were asking for completion of the equipment inventory. Is that right, Eric? Eric? Right? We've got, yeah, so we've been supplied with everything that we've needed, and what I believe Eric is looking for, and that board is looking for us to sign. Arlene is here too, Arlene and I, to sign this contract. So I believe we're here for discussion, if anybody had any time to review it. But what we're asking is that if you would read, review, and bring any of your questions possibly to the next meeting, because that's the timeframe that we'd like to sign it.
So just to catch the newbies up, AKA Jim and me.
Yeah.
I think what happened before we came on board was there was a lot of negotiation of this, our attorneys, their attorneys, everybody's looking at it, everybody's generally comfortable with the terms of what's here, and then you guys set forth a punch list of things that you felt needed to be accomplished before we'd feel comfortable entering into an agreement.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And some of them were like checking, making sure that the 501c3 is
Yeah.
updated.
Yep.
The inventory equipment, which Eric, I
Yeah,
think,
so,
go ahead.
Your points are good, Laura, and that's more or less been the process. Certainly since I started in January, we've been working to get everything caught up from a compliance standpoint. I think you've heard about kind of our proactive, well,
Yes.
reactive net for now, but proactive with everything coming forward, looking into the future with this. Where we've not done as much of what you alluded to is, it's been looked at, I think, very thoroughly from your side, not as thoroughly from our side. So we'd love for you guys to get to a position that you like that agreement, but we've got to take a little bit more time amongst our board to look through it. I know we've had cursory reviews of it, but we have not had it reviewed by any council on our side
Okay.
or anything like that, so. Arlene's got it.
And the other thing is Whitman is going to be entering into the same agreement.
Yes.
So they really want the agreements to be the same. So I forwarded a copy of this to Frank Lyman. There are some things that I think at some point, once you get feedback from the board members, Jim, maybe you or Mike and Eric and I can sit down and come to an agreement with what everybody wants. Because there are some things in here that we have questions about, concerns about.
Okay. Okay.
I know that in the past, we had a nice productive meeting.
We did, it was sometime in July.
July, I think.
Yeah.
So we think a similar approach would be really helpful.
Okay.
So does it make sense for us to be
We won't be
looking at
voting on
this
this
if their council hasn't reviewed it and given feedback and you guys haven't worked out these things? I don't know, I mean,
That's the first time I'm
Laura,
hearing.
in the past, what has happened is Bill Solomon has worked with the town, come up with the agreement, and then we've signed the agreement, because we get to pay the attorney.
Yeah.
So we don't have our own attorney. The town has always been represented by
Okay.
him in the past.
okay.
I think what happened this time was they just took the old agreement and modified it, took out some of the old stuff,
That's right.
and added in some new without using him, other than it maybe asking him some questions
And-
last April.
And part of that reason, you're right, Arlen, part of that reason was because the original contract was with the startup of the company.
Right, and there was a lot of stuff that
There was
wasn't
a lot of
pertinent anymore.
new-
Yeah,
And now we're talking about,
I think
maintaining and moving forward.
Yes.
And I think you've done a good
Yes.
job of removing the startup stuff out of
Yeah.
there. There's some of the other stuff that are in there that we'd like to discuss.
Now,
offline.
to the extent Whitman pushes back and asks for something that's not in there, are you going to be suggesting that our agreement incorporate, in other words, are you looking for complete parity between
Yes,
Whitman and?
yes, and I can
That's-
tell you, Whitman from the very beginning has said, take all the old stuff out, and we're happy with that.
Okay, so this brings me back to my frankly, I don't want to take 15 bites at this apple. I want to look at what they're presenting as the final contract that Whitman's agreed to, that our council has agreed to, that if they decide they've got to go to council, their council agrees to. I don't want to keep going back and forth on the same contract.
So do you understand what Laura's
Oh, yeah,
asking
yeah.
here?
So that we need to meet and,
Yeah.
and get Frank
Come
Lyman
to consensus,
On
probably
board.
invite
Yep.
Frank, maybe to that meeting as well.
At the same meeting, that's
at the
fine.
same meeting and go over
Yeah.
everything, so
So,
that they're the
most likely-
exact same.
Right, so most likely that would mean that we're not gonna get it signed by the end of this year then.
Depends on when we could meet.
Yeah,
Because if, I mean, it depends, right? We could try to meet between now and the
2
next
weeks.
meeting. Right, absolutely. But if there are changes, depending on what.
but for us, it's I think a 10-year term in the agreement, so I think it's more important to be the right fit than
Okay.
the quick fit.
I think, Mr. Chairman, and what everyone has touched upon here, I believe is correct. I believe that we're at 90, if not 95% to fruition on this. And as Arlene has pointed out, we have worked actually to a considerable degree with Bill Solomon. He and I had spoken along the way when we were parsing out the old information. It wasn't a situation where we just kind of took out the X-Acto knife and cut everything out. There were backs and forths as this was progressing, and Arlene and I have had several conversations about this. I know that at this point in time, my understanding is her entire board, it was really just her and I and a couple other people working on it up until this point. Her entire board is looking at it now so that we can bring this thing to rest, and they have brought up a couple of questions. She shared those with me, and we are going to work through them. I would have liked to, although it was probably an impossibility to have it signed this evening. I would like to, if at all possible, fast track it so it could possibly be signed on the 19th. I really don't think there's going to be too much more work to it, other than the logistics of getting a few bodies together to finally say,
Right.
Go with God and sign it. As I said, there are a couple of things that Arlene has just brought to my attention, that was brought to her attention, that we need to discuss, but we will work diligently. I want to, as I think Laura touched upon, I don't want to start biting this apple again. Actually, I think it was thrown in my lap, and I don't mean that in the wrong way. It was presented to me as an issue when I first started here, and that was a year and a half ago, and I too want to see it as they do, as everyone wants to.
So because I know we had met in July, and I thought we were pretty much there, just went out waiting for these things, but now, so this has come
Well,
up.
the thing is, we were working on the matrix, all the things that you wanted
Yes,
in the matrix,
right.
but some of the language in the contract
contract?
was changed, but I wasn't aware of it
I see.
until I got a copy of it.
And your attorney, Mr. Solomon, didn't,
He's not
He's not
our
our
attorney,
attorney?
I thought
he's
he was
your
yours.
attorney. He's your attorney.
He's collectively
We
looking
pay
for,
him.
he's looking for each party's best interest.
I see.
He
Who's
has,
paying him?
We pay him, but he
that's why-
represents you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's-
it's part of
that's why I thought it was.
it's part of the
your attorney.
arrangement. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not unique to this particular town and this particular agency. That is the way it works in other communities as well. But
That's a
again,
difference.
it has not been an exclusive, it's been a very inclusive process that I certainly would like to see come to a very quick end, and I do believe that we'll be able to do such.
Okay.
And Mike, do we ever have our own external counsel take a look at this? I understand that this gentleman is an expert in this particular type of contract, I assume for utilities, for
For cable.
probably-
He is actually
specifically
specific to
For
cable.
cable.
But do we ever have our own
No.
counsel kick the tires just to make sure that there's nothing in here that?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Solomon is one of 3 or 4 attorneys in the state that specialize in this. It's an extremely specialized area of legal expertise that really, they're the only ones that can kind of handle this. And I say that again from a position of experience, having gone through this process in other communities, dealing with these one or two people. I've dealt with Bill a couple of times in other communities, another firm when I was in Mendon. But again, it's really the difference between talking to a heart surgeon and a thoracic surgeon. So,
Well, could I ask, are the items that you need to review with the attorney, I assume they're legal items, or are they blatant?
no, it's not a legal item so much as it is some interpretations that we need to get through.
Okay.
Whether or not the cable access group is comfortable with one or two different things that we have incorporated in there through our consultations with Mr. Solomon. So they're not so much legal as they are, I think, conceptual.
Okay.
But is Whitman going to be on board?
Whitman hasn't seen it, I just sent it to Frank Lyman.
They have to
So-
before.
Okay, but so are you guys saying, I hate to keep asking this question, but are you insistent that this agreement be the same for both towns?
Once you read through the agreement, you'll see there's a lot of things that say.
There's
that
parity,
much is
there has to be
in
parity
so
between
it's
Okay,
a-
so we can't really make the commitment to sign this December 19th unless you get a commitment from Lyman that his guys are going to be on board and
But
have
if-
reviewed it and be
if-
okay with it.
But I think if we can all get together, we can do
Okay.
that.
If we
All right,
can
we
meet next
can do
week,
that.
we can-
I don't.
This is the.
Yeah.
Whitman has-
access.
This corporation was set up basically to protect the town.
Yes.
In terms of free speech, make sure that the town doesn't
Right.
get sued.
Yeah, have
Separation.
liability. of
Yes,
the-
it's separate too.
Why can't we just review, I mean, this thing's been dragging on for so long. Why can't we review this and get back to you with any possible changes? Meanwhile, you can set up a meeting with them so we can move it on. I don't wanna keep putting it off.
But we don't have they're going to be making changes. We don't,
I
right
know,
now, what we've got
but
isn't the final
But
document.
it's minimal, it's
Yes.
minimal
The
changes.
changes, the one or two areas of concern that have been shared with me by Arlene are one or two areas of concern. Again, 90, 95, 98% of this contract that she and I have been talking about, actually, with the involvement of the chairman, we're in agreement with. There's just
But those
one.
are Bill's concerns. We don't know Whitman's concerns yet because they haven't looked at it.
I will take a step back on that and say Whitman has had this contract.
They've looked at it.
Whitman has had this
Okay.
contract.
They haven't-
Whether or not they've had a chance to review it, I've given this stuff to Bill, to Frank Lyman on a number of occasions.
But you could always email the concerns that Arlene has.
Yes, yeah, and as I think somebody pointed to on this
I
board
think
right
we're
now,
overthinking this thing.
where I agree.
Like I said, it's 99% done. They
Right.
have one concern, we
Yeah.
can look at it. Why can't we review if there's something on here? Let's not put it off. And
Well, I'll
it's
tell
been
you
a year and a
what,
half.
review if you can, and to Laura's point, you can't sign a contract that might change.
Right.
So, and I understand.
And they're not asking us to do that.
No, but if they do, but the problem is, Kenny, is that if there is a change that gets incorporated in there. So I think what they're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm gonna repeat what you said, is we're gonna take this contract, sit down with Whitman, sit down with the attorney, address some of your concerns. Any changes that may come about would be,
Incorporated then.
and what we'll do is we'll also bullet point what those changes are, bring them to the meeting, and bring the final contract as well, and say basically, this is what's been changed, if anything.
If anything,
If anything.
which
If it may not.
is the point I was
Right?
just going to make.
And if it doesn't change, then we're good to go. And if it has changed, we'll list what those bullet item changes are and show them, and we would have gotten the contract difference a couple days, I know at least 2 days before the meeting. right?
My conversations with the town administrator in Whitman along these lines has been that
Waiting for us?
he is fairly comfortable with the conversations we have had, albeit they haven't happened recently, since we haven't brought this up in a little while. He's fairly comfortable with what we discussed a while back.
Okay.
We will go back, we will revisit that. Again, I can't say it enough, I really don't expect much heartache going forward on this.
Has his board reviewed this?
Excuse me?
Has his board reviewed
I
this?
can't answer that, I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know, I'd have to speak with Frank about that.
So let's hold a meeting, Mike, if we can, between now
Yep.
and before the next time we meet.
Yes.
Come to what your concerns are, talk, discuss, find out what changes, if any, or if any clarification is needed. We'll bullet those items if any come up, and we'll have the final contract as well.
I don't think anybody's expecting that we're gonna be opening up this whole dialogue again.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds
I mean, I read it on Sunday, but I mean, I'm not a contract lawyer. I mean, it looked good to me, but I don't know that we have the expertise to say, oh, I take this out and put that in and all that.
No.
So,
But that's why I don't want to vote on it until their board votes on it.
they're not asking us to vote.
Not tonight.
Right.
Well, until we review their concerns,
Right.
right, so.
But read it, see if there's something.
We don't want you to vote on it until it's ready to be voted on and
I just don't want to
signed.
just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off.
But Arlene made a great point, she doesn't want us to vote on it until, so.
No,
So
right.
we'll
Until
plan-
it's ready to be signed.
Right,
Right.
so we'll plan on the next,
But
The
your
19th.
goal was to get that done by the end of the year.
yeah,
The 19th,
19.
that's your next meeting.
That's our next, and last, we don't have any meeting.
Hope springs eternal.
So we got a plan laid out,
We
right?
have a plan.
We good to go? Thank you all, thank you both for coming, appreciate that. I've got some days off coming up, holidays time, Mike, so
One time on?
Friday off, Monday, yeah.
And that's how you wanna use them?
Yes, he likes us.
Serve the people of Hanson, right? I'm here to serve.
Come in tomorrow. Just 'cause I'm-
I'm a mess, thank you. Is that what you said? I'm a mess? Yeah, you're right, all right. All right, next on our agenda.
I'll make a motion for that. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of November 28th, 2017.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 You're
I can't, I'm sorry, I abstain.
401,
I
man.
apologize, yeah. This was last week.
Yep.
God, I thought it was 2 weeks ago, I apologize. So I abstain, Mary, it was 401. Old business, we still need to take up with Mr. Mike McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would go into the committee reports for 1 second, before Art leaves, I just have to grab him and mention.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll move to the item on our agenda, item 7, committee reports. For the 200th anniversary committee, that would be Laura?
Yeah, I actually had a conflict, because the same night that we had the 200th anniversary committee last week was the same night that we had the McQuon School Reuse Committee, and one can only be in one place at one time. So I really don't have anything to report to that, other than I know that we've got 2 new members, and Marcus is excited about it, and we've got a meeting coming up in January. That's all I've got to report on that.
Thank you, Laura. Mary, just quick back on the minutes. For the ones that you were not here and Mike was not here. those
We
were-
approved last week.
You did approve last week, gotcha.
Yes.
That's what I was
You did
thinking.
a nice
was
job
very-
on those.
Thank you very much, okay.
That's when I wasn't here.
Sorry, okay. So, so next we have on our committee reports is the Monpont Pond Committee, Mr. Howard.
I haven't heard anything since last week.
Okay, sir. No change since last week's report for the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, Mr. Howard again.
And that, we had a meeting and we just, like I said, we got a thing planned for Saturday,
Well, that's right, the tour.
weather permitting.
Yep. How's the, did they take down the antenna yet or no?
No, the antenna's still up.
Okay. And what about the pile?
The pile is almost completed.
It is, it's getting there, right? All right, good, that's good to know. The McQuon School Reuse Committee, Laura Kemet.
I'm delighted to report that we had our first official meeting last week. It was very basic. It entailed basically having everybody walk through with Ernie Sandlin through the school, because not everybody's got different levels of familiarity with the school. So Ernie kind of walked us through, kind of, answered whatever questions we had. And then Mike and Mary are queuing up the studies that have been done on McQuon, and we'll be scheduling a meeting, I would imagine, in the new year to sit down and really go through that stuff. But it's going to take some time for people to digest that. As you know, it took that committee like years to get all of that information together. But, just to level set, what our goal is on this committee is we're going to vet what all the options are. So we kind of all know what some of those options are. Reuse it, sell it, tear it down. And bring that back to the board, talk to you guys, have you kick the tires, ask whatever questions you've got, and then I may be overly ambitious, but I'm somewhat hoping that we'll have something to present to
Town
town
meeting?
meeting in May.
That's
That is my
terrific.
goal.
Sure.
I may be slightly
That's very
delusional on
aggressive.
that point, but
That'll
I'm
be
going to try.
Yeah, that's very aggressive.
Yeah,
but
it-
that's
I know
great.
it is.
If there's anything I can do to help on that, let me know.
Well, I think, we've got, town meeting, approved us getting, or we've got the funding anyway, for a commercial appraisal to come in, and that person's going to tell us how, the uses that they think, like, what would our target audience be if we were to sell it? Then we've got all the good footwork that the group for the, McQuon, the new school committee, if you will, had done, looking at what kind of conditions all of the systems were in. So we've got that we can work on, and then, we've just got to look at, the tear down portion and what would that cost, and is that even an approach we want to go? So we've got some good foundational materials to work on. So it isn't as though we're starting from scratch.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Laura. Hanson School Repair Committee, Mr. Hickey.
Nothing new to report.
Thank you, Jim. Highway Building Committee, Mr. Mitchell.
Same, nothing new to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, which brings us back to you, Mike, old business.
Thank you. Actually, just to follow up on what Kenny just mentioned, I will say that I did reach out, per the board's permission at the last meeting, I have reached out to Weston and Sampson to start the discussion of having that $28,000 study done. So actually, Dan and I were supposed to speak yesterday, but he had something come up, so, but anyways, just to let you know, as I requested, I'm moving forward on that. I only have a couple of things I wanted to mention. I know this is of interest to the board. The posting for the recreation director ended on Friday last, and we had 24 individuals apply, and we had one vendor express interest in perhaps providing someone to perform in that capacity.
how many people? Mike?
24.
I thought that's what you just said.
Yeah,
Okay,
24.
wow, all right.
The rec commission last night appointed 2 of their members to sit with me to start reviewing those 24 applications, as well as the interest in the one vendor. I will start working with them probably before the weekends, and I will update the board accordingly. Let's see.
Are you gonna look at the, I'm sorry, are you
No.
gonna look at the vendor? as
Oh, yes,
well?
yeah, we're
okay.
looking, like I had said at previous meetings, we're looking at all options to
Right,
make,
okay,
see what makes
great.
the most amount of sense moving forward. We're not committed to anything at this point. But I'll keep the board updated. We haven't, at least I personally haven't even had a chance to look at the submissions yet, so.
So once you work through, oh, go ahead, Jim, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, ladies before gentlemen.
Oh, my God. Once you go through that, you have a couple of members of the Recreation Commission go
Yeah.
through that process. Will it be similar to other positions where you winnow it down and then we see a couple of candidates, or are you guys going to pick the candidate?
Well, it would be, technically, that hire is the Recreation Commission's hire, so it will be something that will come before their board. I will keep this board fully apprised as we move forward with it, but, per the bylaws and the creation of the Recreation Commission, that is a direct report to them, and as with, other committees, that is their hire based on my recommendation, but, of course, with anything that we move forward on that doesn't directly involve the authorization or the hiring authority of the Board of Selectmen, I make them aware of everything that's going forward, and I would think that as we came closer to putting something before that particular board, that board would come in and have a discussion with this board, so.
Okay,
And you manage the
Will not
rules
be
and-
done in a vacuum.
And you manage like the rules and regs so that and give them guidance on
Oh, yes,
on that,
yeah,
right? As a personnel director?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, Laura, that's the last time I'll let you go.
Why, was that your
forward.
question?
It pretty much was. All I was gonna say was the last time that the recreational director was hired up there was a member of the Board of Selectmen that sat in
Yeah.
with you and one member of the Recreation Commission.
That's correct, but that was as a result of the fact that the Recreation Commission was so new and they were uncomfortable moving without the involvement of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Technically, the Board of Selectmen does not need to be involved in that, and again, it's a Recreation Commission hire, and at this point, they have been around long enough that they're comfortable with going forward with the process on their own.
Are you volunteering?
Excuse me? No. If you would like this, I would volunteer.
I will speak to them about that.
Okay.
I certainly will.
What else we got, Mike?
I wanted to bring the board up to date. I believe that I sent out the decision by the court not that long ago. I don't think, there are certain members of this board that probably are not aware of and haven't had the experience or the history in regards to some of the properties down in Mont Ponce that we've been dealing with long before me or anyone actually sitting at this table, I think to even include Dawn. One piece of property on Ocean Drive, Ocean Ave, we were able to clear all of that for the most part up last year or so. There is another property owned by the same group of people on Depot Street, which has been an eyesore for quite some time. It actually is a lot better than it was over the last few years. However, there are still some things that need to be tended to. We did go to court the end of last week.
We won that, didn't we?
And we won it. Well, we won a decision that basically said the current owner has 45 days to clean it up to the degree that would make the building commissioner happy. And if that doesn't happen, then we go back and file a contempt of court. But it was a victory in a sense to try to further move that forward. The residents of the area have been, for understandable reasons, complaining about this for years and years and years and years. It basically looked like a dump site. And again, it's been cleaned up, bless you, it's been cleaned up, I want to say 75 to 80% of what it was, but there's still more that needs to be done. So I want to let the board, be aware of that, especially the new members. It's been back and forth for years and years and years, apparently.
Making progress, though.
Yes. I wanted to bring the board up to date. I believe I touched upon it at the last meeting in terms of trying to secure the services of at least a temporary interim town planner. I have spoken on one level or another with 3 different people who are professionals in the field, bring an awful lot to the table. Actually, oddly enough, just before this meeting, literally just before this meeting this evening, another person who is a retired town planner in the area reached out to me, who I expect to speak to tomorrow. I have made arrangements or had conversations with the chairman of the planning board to try to arrange basically an afternoon or a segment of time in which we don't necessarily have to sit with everybody, but he will be on the phone, I'll be on the phone, and we can reach out to these 3 and potentially 4 people and get his input. As I probably have said on many occasions, I'm not a micromanager. I don't want to make these unilateral decisions moving forward that, guess what, here's your town planner, enjoy. I want to make sure that the people in the office and the board to which this person would report have as much, if not more, input than I. So we're going through that process. It's moving forward. Now it's moving forward with the speed that I wished it to move forward. And again, I'm really happy to say that I've got 3, if not 4, very qualified people that can fit in at least in a temporary situation. So again, I'm sure that I'll have much more to tell you on the 19th.
Would that be on a part-time basis or full-time?
Part-time right now. Yeah, there's thought as to how we might want to move forward in the next fiscal year with that position, but that obviously depends on the volume of work, it depends on the budget. I, like with what the board had agreed to not that long ago in terms of the conservation agent, I want to get us through so that we get whatever needs to get addressed in the short term, taken care of, and which will also allow us to figure out what we're going to do in the long term. And sometimes these short-term solutions turn into the long-term solution, but we've got something in place right now to get us through, so we're not, missing any marks.
And Laurie, thanks to Laurie Muncy for covering it.
Yes, very much so.
So she's done, right?
She continues to contribute here and there on some of these legacy sorts of things, but it's pretty much tapered out.
Okay.
I expect to get the feedback in terms of applications for the facility manager within the next week or so, and I would imagine by the 19th I can give the board a really good update on where we are with that, because that would be a position that would come before the Board of Selectmen. Even though we've talked about the needs up at the camp, which will be addressed first, it will actually be a Board of Selectmen hire, and then eventually a town-wide, a position that would look at facilities town-wide. I'm not very happy to report, and I think I alluded to this at the last meeting, that the deadline for the veterans agent has come and went, and indeed, I only have one person who's applied for that. That particular individual I had spoken to previously when we were considering something in conjunction with Hanover. So I am versed in who this person is. I will bring him in and have a further conversation with him. He does come with qualifications. So with any luck, I may be able to bring that before the board on the 19th as well. It would be preferable so that we have a little bit of crossover with the current agent so they can have a few weeks or so together. Although Bob has said he will obviously help after the first of the year as well. I mean, he's dedicated to the cause, so he will still be around.
I know we had the deadline, but we don't plan on extending the deadline
I don't see any reason to.
I just hate to, this is no offense, I don't even know who this person is.
Yeah.
I just obviously think it's preferable to have a pool of candidates from which to choose.
Agreed, and, the unfortunate thing, and I may have touched upon this in the conversations when we were discussing the potential of combining with Hanover, is this is a part-time position, which commands a part-time salary, and there's not a lot of people that are interested in doing that. As a matter of fact, the conversations with this gentleman, they originated with the thought that it was going to be a potential full-time position between the two towns. I had reached out. It wasn't just an advertisement in the local newspaper. I had reached out to the regional and the state agencies that these particular individuals belong to no avail. So.
There's no guarantee if you offer him the position, he's gonna take it.
Yeah, that's true too. That is true too, and.
So is the regional one still on the table, or no?
Actually, to be quite honest with you, I did, I went over and spoke to the people in Hanover and said, I'm sorry, at this point in time, the town of Hampton, it does not want to move in that direction. However, in keeping with that within that conversation, he made clear that that door is still open. Okay. So it may be something, given these circumstances, this board may wish to revisit. It may not wish to revisit it, but it's not off the table. My understanding is the town of Hanover, because of its population, needs to have the full-time person. That's legislatively mandated. However, they're not convinced that they necessarily have the amount of work that warrants a full-time person. Hence, the origin of the conversations we had with them. So that's obviously not changing. So I think that should this board wish me to go back and explore that again, that door is open.
Okay.
I
And that's
think we should give him that option to be able to do that and come back to us with a little more information.
Can we do it by the 19th, Mike?
Well, see, the problem is, the town of Hanover, it needs to move forward. It can't really. So I don't know whether or not, I'm not privy now to their hiring process. I don't know if this particular gentleman is putting for the full-time position in Hanover.
Right.
It gets a little sticky since we, have gone in a different direction.
But I think we should allow you to open the doors and open the talks back up with Hanover and see what you can come up with.
Well, if
that's what you choose to do.
How long does he have to accept the job, though?
Again, our job or
Yes,
the
our
Hanover job?
Ours. Because if he says no to ours, we've no choice but to.
No, we don't, because we do need to have
But also, he
coverage.
could interview him and might not want to offer him the job either.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's true
I'm saying
too.
we should just give him the authority to kind of whatever way he feels to go and come back to us
To explore all the
to
options.
explore all the options.
Yeah.
Is what I think we should
I
do.
haven't spoken either.
Do you know what we're trying to say here, Mike?
Yeah, and I think I made it clear to the board what I thought, what my preference was, what I thought made the most amount of sense, was to do it jointly for the reasons that I expressed. And
I just didn't like some of the hours that they posted. I want to make sure that it's going to be equal.
But now that we know you only have one employee, I think that would probably sway us back towards the Hanover.
I
Well,
agree. I think we had envisioned
You know?
like a vast pool of applicants
Yeah.
from which we could choose and would have the hours we wanted and, you know, we
Well,
might have been a little bit naive.
Well, again, I think the stigma or the thing that set us back at that point was, again, the fact that it's a part-time position. We only have a certain amount of money budgeted. It makes no sense for us to go to a full-time position. Number one, we don't have to. Number two, it doesn't make any sense, given the population that we'll be serving, the numbers that we'll be serving. The combination between the two towns really, I felt made sense. So if the board is so inclined, I'm more than happy.
Do we have to take
More
a
than
vote
hap-
on that, or?
I think we should.
Actually, you took a vote
We
originally.
took a vote the other way,
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
Vote the other way. So I'll make a motion to allow Town Administrator Mike McHugh to explore all options regarding the Veterans Agent,
Including regionalization.
including regionalization. Very good.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0 on that vote, Mary.
Thank you. It won't be that difficult, I think, to rekindle that with the town of Hanover.
And how long is the town manager gonna be there? When's his
He's
last-
gone.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
already gone.
Yeah, he ended up, they came to just an agreement where he left, it's been a few weeks at least, right?
I thought it was
Oh,
like
yeah,
November
like the
19th or
third.
something.
That was like the
No,
It's
now that
been
you
a few
mention it, I
weeks.
think
It's been
you
a
sent
few
the same
weeks.
email on that, matter of fact.
Yeah,
It's
and
too bad. I like Troy.
Tony has taken over as the interim.
Intro? Okay.
Was he the assistant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
good.
and he's the person I last spoke to about this. So, okay.
Is that it?
Yeah, the only other, last thing I guess I wanted to mention was quick updates on the three projects we have out there. The fire department parking lot, as you're probably well aware, that's done. And looks great, and from what I understand, the fire chief's very happy with it. Up at the old hospital, all of the materials, the sweepings and the catch basin materials, they've all been encapsulated and buried, and there's been some topsoil put over it. We've expanded the footprint a considerable degree. There are some things that we still need to go back and tidy up, particularly the drop-off, where you can see some of the what do they call them? Not infiltration, but there's some material that you put down to make sure that certain things don't escape. Yeah, fabric. That needs to be tidied up a little bit, and we're having conversations with them to come back and finish up a couple of things that we have some concerns about. There will be winter rye planted there so that the soil can start getting some sort of semblance of firmness to it. And so that's just about completely done.
What about the antenna, Mike?
The antenna, it's funny because we had a discussion Monday when we were doing the update on the septic system up at the camp. I had approached, and I don't remember if I had mentioned this to the board, but I had approached the vendor, the contractor who's doing the septic system up there, and asked him, hey, is there any way you can do this? And they took a very serious look at it. However, they're concerned because of the height. We really, in their opinion, we need somebody with a great big boom, with a great big crane and a boom to latch onto it and guide it and drop it. They don't have that sort of equipment.
Yeah.
They're more than happy to, if we can speak with somebody with such equipment, they're more than happy to go in and do all the soldering and cutting the metal and whatnot and participating in it. But we have to reach out and find somebody that can make sure that it lands where it needs to land there. They were really concerned that somebody could get injured or killed if it wasn't done the right
wow.
way.
Okay, yeah.
So, which I immediately took a step back and said, thank you for telling us that, not moving forward. So, the plan is, and I had this discussion again with them and with our engineer Monday morning up at the camp. Our plan is to reach out and see if we can find somebody with such a piece of
Fall,
equipment
yeah.
and get rid of it.
I know one company, but
Is it a local company?
yeah.
What else do you have, Mike?
Lastly, as I had just mentioned, I had a meeting on Monday concerning the septic system. It looks like the project will be done before Christmas, which is basically in keeping with the schedule. The lodge is now connected with the south infiltration system, which is what we wanted. There's a new grease trap installation that's underway. which actually is quite a considerable little project there in and of itself that I looked at. And there will be pumps installed within the next 2 weeks for the North Bathhouse, so it's moving right along. And as I think we alluded to when we're talking about trees, once all of that is said and done and everything is smoothed over and graded, we will go back and we will start looking at repopulating the area in the appropriate places with trees.
And
So,
Mike,
and that will last, that system should last us for another 20, 30 years.
is there a need for maintenance on that system so that it lasts us another, I mean, is there a maintenance program? And-
Yeah, there will
Okay.
need to be blowouts
I
occasionally.
just hope we're gonna be rigorous about
They
that.
pump
Yes.
it every
Yeah.
couple of years and take care of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yes.
it'll last forever.
Yes. There'll be, there's certain portions in there that they, they're called blowouts. They'll go in and they'll run them and do the I&I and all those sorts of things. So we certainly will make sure that going forward, there will be a program in place to maintain it to the PMs. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
After listening to
Motion
this wind,
to
we might not have to
adjourn.
worry about that antenna.
No, I know, huh?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn.
I heard you, Don.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll see you on December 19th.
Hopefully, we'll see them December 9th.
December
This
9th.
Saturday.
Oh, that's right, at the
Festival.
Holiday Festival, where you can buy your buttons at Shaw's or local stores, some of the other local stores, for $5 a button. So we'll see you hopefully this Saturday, and thank you all for coming. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. 5-0.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a
Where are
good
the
night.
buttons for the Saturday?
I think they sell them at Shaw's. I know-